Hello and welcome to the Whirly Bloke channel. Today I'll be reviewing this 3-inch twig toothpick quad from Eachine. So here's another quad in the popular toothpick size, and there's a reason it's a popular class, because these are small, fun and fast, and they fly pretty well and are cheap to run with small, cheap batteries. So standing out in the market is getting harder, but this twig from Eachine uses an HD FPV camera. And you can get this with either the Runcam Nano 2 or the Caddx Baby Turtle, and I've opted for the Caddx version, which is a 1080p 60 frames per second that's got an onboard DVR for recording flight footage. And I'm looking forward to checking this out as part of the review. As usual, Eachine provided a nice zipped carry case for this. And let's have a look in here. You get the usual manual. There's a joystick for the camera, and you get a bag which has got a spare set of props, a little mini screwdriver, some spare bolts and some foam pads. The first thing you'll notice is this isn't really a toothpick, or what we understand as a toothpick size quad, but for me this is a much more sensible size. Some of the toothpicks are too small and too flexy. Taking a closer look, this frame does seem to be heavily inspired or borrowed from the Speed Racer Twig from Racer X FPV. It's not quite a straight copy, but it's very similar, and Eachine have cheekily used the same Twig name, which is a bit much really. This frame is 2.5mm carbon, which makes it pretty stiff. I have to say, it's not bad. Although the carbon isn't super high quality, it's perfectly fine for a quad of this size. The great design feature of this, just like the Speed Racer Twig it borrows from, is the excellent protection that it has around the motors, which will definitely protect it, particularly the bells, when you hit something hard. And this canopy is interesting. It's not TPU, but seems to be moulded polycarbonate. It's quite hard, and it's very rigid, which is perfect for mounting a CMOS camera. Mounting CMOS cameras on flexible TPU mounts results in lots of jello and is a common mistake made by quad makers. CMOS cameras have got this rolling shutter effect that just gets aggravated by a flexible mount, and that just ends up in really horrible jello. but this mount is rigid, so it works really well. On the other hand, it is more brittle, so we'll have to see how well it stands up to a bit of abuse and crashing. And it does have excellent camera protection. This is really good. But that's a bit like the Speed Racer Twig as well. The USB on the underside of the Crazy Bee board is easily accessible because the frame has got this convenient cutout here. But it projects through the frame, a bit difficult to see, and will dig into your battery and could actually puncture it. So make sure you use some of the foam pads that are provided. Although I'll be using my silicone non-slip pads, which are a bit thicker. The Eachine ones aren't that great, to be honest. Same with this battery strap. I know these are built to a budget and they have to keep the cost down, but rubbish battery straps just irritate me. A good one can't really cost that much more. A few other things. These 4 bolts here, those 4 there, that hold the flight controller and the canopy to the frame are countersunk. And they've done that to stop the battery digging into them. But the frame itself hasn't been countersunk to recess them. It's just a bit of a sloppy build quality. And this hole in the canopy to take the sleeve dipole VTX antenna, I don't know what's been cut out with it, but it's very crudely done. And lastly, these motor wires, they really need some tape to stop them flapping about and getting cut in the props in a crash. Now, this is using the Crazy Bee F4 Pro version 3, all-in-one flight controller and ESC board. Now, I've had my issues with the version 2 of this board, and so have many others. It has a habit of frying the 5-volt DC buck inverter, and I've got a few dead ones lying around here. Now, it seems the ESCs were causing massive spikes on the supply that the BEC wasn't spec'd for, and it would just die. This was partially fixed by adding a large low ESR capacitor across the battery terminals down here to suppress the spikes generated by the ESCs. But this version has got upgraded ESCs that are less noisy, and the BEC has been changed, and that seems to have fixed it. Certainly the Cinecan 4K I tested a couple of months ago uses the V3 controller, and that's been absolutely fine for me. One thing that hasn't changed is the onboard SPI receiver, which has just got awful range. On the Cinecan, it was about 50 meters before it fail-safed. But a huge bonus on this Twig, they've usefully added this cable, if I can dig it out here, so that you can easily add your own S-Bus receiver without having to take all this apart and do any soldering on the board. And that is a really good addition, and I'll be putting an XM Plus on here, a full range receiver. And again, like the Cinecan, the onboard receiver bind button is impossible to get to without taking the quad apart. Of course, you can bind using the Betaflight CLI, using the bind RX SPI command to put the receiver into bind mode. Well, that does depend on which version of Betaflight you're using. But until recently, that was not so well known. But hats off to Eachine for including this in their excellent manual. It's the first time I've seen this as an addition. Very useful for somebody who's starting out. It really does make a difference when you're new to setting up quads, and it's the first time I've seen this in a manual. So well done, Eachine. Now, apart from a couple of neat features, it might seem like I've got a downer on this little quad, but there are a few totally brilliant things about this that make it stand out. These Eachine branded 1105 5200 kV motors are little gems. They're really torquey and give the quad so much punch. Tight turns are like it's on rails, and it generally feels very positive on the sticks. And I've heard some criticism about the Gemfan 3025 props, but to me, they feel just right. In fact, this motor prop combo on 3S is the best on a toothpick quad that I've tested for a long time. Although I would like to try out some 3018 props on here. Now, I've no idea if these are just rebranded motors from another supplier or whether they're actually made by Eachine, but they are really very, very good. Next is the VTX, which is buried in here, the little diamond VTX. It's fantastic. It's 40 channels, 25 to 200 milliwatts switchable using smart audio, and it works way better than it should do in this price range, which came as a real surprise. And combined with the Caddx Baby Turtle in here, it's a really great combination. And this has been confirmed by other reviewers using the Runcam Nano 2, which is another option on here. So it's not just the Caddx camera that's good, the VTX on here is excellent. And you get this little sleeve dipole antenna sticking out the top here, which is fine. And talking of the camera, this is the first time I've tried the Baby Turtle, and I'm very impressed. It's a 1080p 60 frames per second HD camera, 2 megapixels, switchable between NTSC and PAL, and it's got low light capability. It's just like the full-size 19mm split Caddx Turtle V2, but in a 14mm size nano camera. And this allows you to record your flight footage on the SD card that you plug just in here, just down there. And there's a simple single button down there to start and stop recording. And you get a joystick which plugs in the back here on this 2-lead connector there, and that allows you to change all the settings on the camera. And this is spec'd at 800 TV lines with a 1.8mm lens. The CMOS sensor is the slightly smaller 1/2/7 of an inch rather than 1/2/3, sorry, the 1/3 of an inch. And you can put up to a 64 gig SD card in here. And as you can see from the footage, it's pretty good on both HD and FPV, although the HD is much better than the FPV. And because this is using the HD camera, this is a bit heavier than the Runcam Nano version. But let's check it out. It is 65 grams, just over 65 grams without a battery. And I think the Runcam Nano version is around 60 grams, something like that. And this is flashed with Betaflight 4.0.4 on the Crazy BF4 FR target. And what I'll be using, because I'm using an XM Plus, I'll use UART1 on here for the S-Bus. And there'll probably be some changes I need to make to suit my particular setup. The tune on this is good for up to about 60% throttle, but after that there's some vibrations, and I have tweaked my PIDs a bit. It's not perfect, but it's better and needs a bit more work. So in summary, this does fly really well, like it's on rails, and it's a punchy powertrain of motors and props. The Caddx Baby Turtle and the VTX are a really good combination, and the HD footage on the Caddx is very, very good indeed. Weirdly, it looks better than the Tarsia dual sensor at the same resolution, and it's a smaller sensor. The FP video is okay, but it's a little bit on the blurry side, but that's not uncommon with split cameras. For me, the only things that let it down that I've talked about can be easily fixed. Maybe they could even add a buzzer as well. Now, I'm ambivalent about the frame. It's a great little quad, but should Eachine have so blatantly copied the Speed Racer Twig? It's a tricky one, and I'll let you decide for yourselves. Now, this is in the £100 or $120 price range, which is decent, but do check the link in the description for the latest prices. I've tried a few batteries, 2S and 3S, and for me, flying this using these GMB 3S 300 mAh HV LiPos seems to be about the best power to weight ratio. Certainly flying it on 2S, it feels very underpowered. And these 450s are just a little bit too heavy. I've added the FrSky XM receiver and soldered it to the useful lead that Eachine provided. I had planned to use an XM Plus, but I just didn't have one on the shelf. And the antenna can be easily fixed to a zip tie and attached to the canopy just here. And you can tape or zip tie the XM itself to the back of the frame out of the way, which is quite nice. I've also taped up these motor wires, which were flopping around all over the place. Didn't really like that too much. And I've also added a 2mm silicone pad at the bottom to protect the battery from the sharp USB connector here. I've tweaked the tune a little bit to try and get rid of the high throttle vibration. It's not that horrid, but it does need tuning out. I'll probably do that in a later video. As always, thanks for watching, and if you found that useful, give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. And if it's your first visit, then please consider subscribing to the channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post a new video. I'll see you next time.